So now coming to my talk on India-Russia relations, what I have been advised, we have time till about 11 o'clock or so a little more than 1 hour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be speaking for about 40 minutes. A very good introduction has been provided by Professor Girish Kumar. In fact, when we were discussing as to what subject I should address myself to, and it was my suggestion that I speak on India-Russia relations for a couple of reasons. One, what he's mentioned, Professor Girish Kumar has mentioned, it is one of our most significant, most important relations. And I think our relations with very many countries have seen many ups and downs. They have changed, they have become better, they have become worse. But India-Russia relations, India-Soviet Union relations, and again now from 1990 onwards, India-Russia relations, they continue to be strong. There might be sort of a little difference as far as their dynamism, the energy is concerned, the level of confidence is concerned. But by and large, the relations have been extremely strong and extremely vital for both our countries. That is the first reason. And the second is that this relationship, notwithstanding the fact that it is so important, it doesn't really attract too much of traction. It doesn't attract too much of attention from the people, whether it is in terms of the academic world or it is in terms of the general public. Although the general public also has a very positive image as far as Russia is concerned. I think many of us would remember that when Prime Minister Modi went to Fortaleza, it was in 2014. I think it was his first foreign visit after assuming power in May of 2014. And he visited Fortaleza, I think, in July 2014. It was his first meeting with President Vladimir Putin. And his first opening salvo in his conversation with Putin was that if you, in India, if you were to go down a street and you meet a child and you ask him what is the most important relationship, which is the strongest relationship of India, even a child without batting an eyelid would say it is Russia. So I think as far as people are concerned, as far as the academia is concerned, they do realize it's the most important relationship, but it doesn't get all that much of traction. So I thought, let me speak about this. So first, what I'll do is I'll spend just a few minutes on the historical evolution of relations between India and Russia, then India and Soviet Union. And much of my presentation will be focused on the current state. As Professor Girish Kumar said, we are also at a very important stage in the development of our bilateral ties, because we have just had on the 10th of this month, we had the meeting of the National Security Advisors to discuss Afghanistan. We had the Russian NSA also participating in those discussions. Then early next month, on the 6th of December, we will have the visit of President Vladimir Putin. And just before that, we will also have the first 2+2 dialogue, which means that our Defense Minister, Raksha Mantri Shri Rajnath Singh, and External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, they will be traveling to Russia for a meeting with their counterparts. So this will be the first 2+2 dialogue between India and the Russian Federation. So we are at the threshold of a very important phase in our bilateral ties. Coming to the significance and importance, the bilateral relations, diplomatic relations between the two countries were in fact established even before India became independent. It was on the 11th of April 1947. So just a few months before India got its independence, we had established bilateral relations between the two countries. But going back historically, I think the first, what I would like to refer to is the first visit by a person named Afanasy Nikitin. He was a Russian merchant, and he belonged to Tver, which is city very close to Moscow. He traveled to India in 1466. In fact, he took a ship down the Volga, but his ship got wrecked. So he swam across the Caspian, and from Iran, from Persia, he took a ship and came to India. And he spent a lot of time in India, and wrote about his own impressions, what he saw. In fact, there's a film also that was made just after India's independence, Travel Over the Three Seas, and the well-known Indian film actress Nargis acted in that film. In fact, we have just celebrated the 550th anniversary of the visit of Afanasi Nikitin, and a postage stamp was released by the Indian Postal Service, and a special day cover was also released on that occasion. The second individual that I would like to speak about, who have written and contributed greatly to the understanding of India in Russia, is a person by the name of Gerasim Lebedev. And Gerasim Lebedev, he was a talented musician. He traveled to India in 1785. He actually was from, again, a place not far away from Moscow, from Yaroslavl. I have been to all those places, as Professor Girish Kumar mentioned. I have done two stints in Russia, one when it was the capital of the Soviet Union in the early 1980s, and second when it was the capital of the Russian Federation from 1997 to 2000. So I visited all these places and many more places, and of course, even till the late 90s, it was very good to see the very strong reservoir of goodwill and friendship and affection for India amongst the people of Russia. So Gerasim Lebedev, he was a talented musician. His family moved to St. Petersburg. He worked in the choir. He came with a British band to Madras, now Chennai, in 1785. He was a violinist. He learned violin by himself, and he thought that he would be able to teach music, and he would be able to go around and see the country. But then Madras was too conservative and too small for him. And at that time, the capital of the British uh, empire, or of the East India Company that was established here, that was Calcutta. So he moved to Calcutta in 1787, and he learned Bengali, he learned Sanskrit, he learned Hindi. He compiled a Bengali dictionary, translated several works into Russian and Bengali. He became very friendly with the people there, and started a Bengali theater. The first Bengali theater in India was the first theater was actually started by Gerasim Lebedev in 1795. But the fact that he was so close and he was so friendly with the Indian people was not liked by the Britishers. So they got him arrested. They sent him to London. He was able to get his freedom and come back to St. Petersburg. There he established a printing press, and he did a lot of work. He published dictionaries, published translations in Bengali, in Sanskrit, in Russian. So he was another one. And the last in this series that I would mention is Nikolai Reddick. I'm sure all of you have heard his name, all of you have seen his paintings. He was a Russian artist, he was a philosopher, he was an architect, he was an archaeologist, he was a theosophist, a writer, a public figure. He visited India first in fact, he had opened a club named Agni Yoga in London in 1923. He came to India in 1925. In his youth, he was influenced greatly by Russian symbolism, a movement in Russian society that is centered on the spiritual. And this is what he took forward also with him. He had close contact with Mahatma Gandhi, with Nehru. His son, Svetoslav Reddick, also, who was a great artist himself, a painter himself, He married Devika Rani. In fact, Nikolai Reddick had met the grandfather of Devika Rani, that is Rabindranath Tagore, in London. They got married. She was at that time the queen of the Indian screen, and they lived in Bengaluru, and he died in 1988. So historically, these are very important figures in bilateral India-Russia bilateral relations. Of course, coming beyond that, very strong relations between Mahatma Gandhi and Leo Tolstoy. In fact, Mahatma Gandhi has mentioned that he owed the foundations of his philosophy of satyagraha was from Leo Tolstoy, and it was uh, he even opened a Tolstoy farm during his time in South Africa. Tagore also visited Soviet Union in 1930 after he had received the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1913. He traveled in Soviet Union and was deeply impressed with what he saw. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru was also deeply impressed with the Soviet experiment. He went there with his father, Motilal Nehru, in 1927. That is the first, after the first decade of the Bolshevik Revolution. And but after India became independent, the relations did not really start off on a good note, because Stalin was always looked at India with great suspicion. He thought that this was the forces, the Indian Congress Party and the forces which had won independence for India. They were agents of counter-revolutionary forces. They were agents of the bourgeoisie. So he always looked with great suspicion as far as the Indian leadership was concerned. So it was only after his death in 1953 that relations between the two countries started improving, getting better. Nehru, along with his daughter Indira Gandhi, they visited the Soviet Union in 1955, and this visit was reciprocated by Bulgarin and Khrushchev the same year, and this helped to further cement the ties. And this is why today, when we speak about relations between India and Russia, we call Russia as a key pillar of India's foreign policy, and that Russia is a long-standing, time-tested partner of India. It is the Soviet Union extended very significant, very valuable political, diplomatic, and strategic support to India. The West had was not forthcoming in providing support and assistance to India for its economic growth and development, and Soviet Union stepped in uh, into the sort of vacuum that had become available. India received very generous assistance, both in terms of funding as well as technology, as well as support, economic support for its industrialization, whether it is in defense, it is space, atomic energy, economic development. I'm sure these are household names like the Bharat Heavy Electrical Limited, like the Oil and Natural Gas Corporation, Hindustan Aeronautic Limited, the Regional Engineering Corporation. So these are all industries that the Soviet Union and the Bhilai and the Bokaro steel mills, the Indian Institute of Technology in Powai, Mumbai, areas of defense, nuclear energy, space. So all of these were came readily from the Soviet Union, and in the area of culture also, in the area of people to people relations also, there was a very strong partnership between the two countries. Of course, the Soviet Union also came to the help and support of India at the UN Security Council. If I remember correctly, there were six times when the Soviet Union exercised its veto in favor of India. Once it was during the Goa conflict in 1961. Thrice it was during the 1971 war for the liberation of Bangladesh, and on two other occasions it was on the question of Kashmir. So the Soviet Union was the go-to country as far as support to India was concerned in a variety of fields, even in the area of multilateral diplomacy. The pinnacle of our relations was, I would say, was reached in August 1971. Again, if my memory serves me correctly, 8th of August 1971, when we signed the Treaty of Peace, Friendship, and Cooperation. This was just prior to the war for the liberation of Bangladesh in December 1971, and we could see that there was the United States, China, the United Kingdom, they were all against the war in which Pakistan would be defeated. The United States, of course, was extremely grateful to Pakistan because it had provided uh, the conduit for the visit of Henry Kissinger to China in 1971, in June 1971, again, if I remember correctly. And so it did not want that the war should result in defeat of Pakistan. So I'm sure all of you would remember how the USS Enterprise, a part of the 7th Fleet, had sailed into the Bay of Bengal to try and intimidate and threaten India so that the war would not result in the dismemberment of Pakistan. But India was not cowed down by this gunboat diplomacy of the United States. And China also kept its peace, although the United States tried to provoke it into opening another front on the northern border with India, but that did not happen. So this Treaty of Peace, Friendship, and Cooperation it was a masterstroke by India, by Mrs. Indira Gandhi, and it came to India's big support and aid in the war in 1971. After that, we come to the 1991, the disintegration of the Soviet Union, and the solid ties that have been built on a strong edifice of robust and vigorous relations between Soviet Union and India experienced some uncertainty because we had Yeltsin at the helm of affairs, and Alexei Kozyrev was the foreign minister, who wanted very much to uh, who was leaning and veering towards the West, thinking that we would be able to get, that they would be able to get much greater economic support, economic and political support from the West. But that failed to materialize. So the strategic relationship, the 1971 treaty was valid for 20 years, and it was not extended in 1991 because even the Russian Federation became independent in December of 1991 after the uh, breakup of Soviet Union. They had many other things to look after, and this treaty was never extended. So the strategic relationship between India and Russia, now I come to our current day relations, that was established during the first visit of President Vladimir Putin in 2000 to India. In fact, that was a very, very momentous year because I'm sure many of you would recall, and as Professor Gurish Kumar has told me, that you've had many lectures and talks on India's relations with the world. There have been 2000, the year 2000 was very significant because that also represented the very sharp upward trajectory of India-US relations, because in March 2000 we had the visit of President Bill Clinton to India. And since then, there has been no looking back as far as India-US relations are concerned. We also signed the India-EU strategic partnership, and that has also been very significant in taking our relations forward. In India-EU strategic partnership also, we agreed to have annual summits between the two, and we did have them till about 2013, but after that we have not been able to sustain them. But as far as Russia is concerned, we have by and large been able to sustain those annual summit meetings between our two leaders, except last year in 2020. And I'll come to that as we go forward. But the reason that was given was the COVID-19, and neither of the two leaders was able to travel. They were not traveling last year at all. But of course, there were some questions, and I will come to that when I come to the present day situation. This was the strategic relationship, strategic partnership that was established in 2000. That was upgraded to a special and privileged strategic partnership in 2010. So on the 10th anniversary, it was upgraded to a special and privileged strategic partnership. You know, there are times when people say that if you have nothing more to show, much to show as far as the substance of the relationship is concerned, you sort of, give even more stronger and more, put more flowery language as far as the ties are concerned. But this might be true of certain cases, but definitely it is not true as far as relations between India and the Russian Federation are concerned, because the relations are truly dynamic, they are vibrant, and they are very robust. And they continue to get better and to improve. So we have seen over the last 20 years that there is enhanced cooperation in several areas, including political, security, trade, economy, defense, science, technology, and culture. So I would like to maybe speak briefly about some of the main decisions and achievements over the last few summits that have been held. But before that, maybe I could speak briefly on some of the individual aspects of bilateral ties. So first, the most important is the defense ties between the two countries. And here we have seen that before the breakup of the Soviet Union, India depended to the extent of about 80 to 90% of all our defense imports coming from the Soviet Union. Because the latest technology was not being provided to us by the West, by the United States, and so everything was coming from first from the Soviet Union and then from the Russian Federation. But then again, you would have had a talk on India-US ties, and you would have seen that the first defense agreement that was signed between India and the United States was in 2005. And after that, our defense partnership with the United States has also started increasing. So we have been importing, and over the last few years, we have increased very significantly our imports from the United States, whether it is the Apache helicopters, Chinook helicopters, P-8I drones, the Reaper drones that the Prime Minister, when he was in Washington D.C. recently, he met the CEOs of many of these companies, of General Atomics also. So many of these latest technology we are importing from the United States. So our share of imports of defense equipment from Russia has come down. It has come down to anything between 55 to 60%, but still it is a very significant figure. And again, what was mentioned by Professor Girish Kumar, we placed the order in 2018 during the summit in St. Petersburg for five systems of the S-400 ballistic missile defense system. And this is value up to about $5.5 billion. The supply is commencing right now. So again, this is a very important time as far as the relations between India and the Russian Federation are concerned. So, of course, there is a cloud, sort of a Damocles sword hanging over it, because, again, as it was mentioned, we have CATSA on the horizon, which is countering America's adversaries through Sanctions Act. You must have been informed about that in your lecture on USA. And that is a Congress statute of the United States, according to which if there are very significant arms acquisitions from three countries, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, then this act would come into operation. And in fact, this has been utilized against Turkey last year, because Turkey also imported S-400 from Russia. And so now, of course, when Lloyd Austin had come earlier this year, the Defense Secretary of the United States, and he was asked this question, whether the United States is going to impose the CATSA sanctions against India. Then he says that the supplies have not started as yet, so we cannot say anything. It's premature. But now the supplies have started. We can discuss about the possibility of the sanctions, but this is a very significant acquisition from Russia. The United States has been wanting India to import its own ballistic missile defense system called the THAAD, which it was putting in place in South Korea, because of which it had big problems with China. But the S-400 is supposed to be of much, in terms of technology, it is supposed to be much bigger and much better than the THAAD system. So over the last few years, we've seen that our procurement has jumped from about 2-3 billion in 2018 to around 9-10 billion in last year. Last month, we also had the launch of Indian Navy frigate of Tushil class. It was launched in Moscow. So contract for this frigate had also been signed in 2018 at the 19th summit between the two countries. This took place in Delhi. This intergovernmental agreement is for manufacture of 4 frigates, 2 in Russia and 2 at the Goa Shipyard Limited, and there would be transfer of technology from Russia to India. There is also the production is about to start of 700,000 AK-203 Kalashnikov rifles in Amethi. The factory is being set up there. Our talks are also continuing for procuring the MiG-29K for the indigenous aircraft carrier, which will be known as INS Vikrant, which is being manufactured in India. More of T-90 tanks, more of Su-30 MKI for the Indian Air Force. In 2016, if I remember correctly, when the summit took place in Goa on the sidelines of the BRICS summit, then there was also an agreement signed for 200 Kamov 226T helicopters. And there also what was agreed was that 40 will be supplied in fully finished form, and 160 would be supplied in terms of more of the components and parts would be made in India, and they would be assembled in India. There would be transfer of technology here. So we see that now the defense relationship between India and Russia, it is no longer a buyer-supplier relationship. It is also in terms of designing, in terms of progressive manufacture, in terms of indigenization, in terms of make in India of many of these equipments. That is also happening. So one is the defense partnership, defense relationship. It is a very significant element. And although, as I mentioned, there has been pressure on India to by the United States to not have such huge inventories and acquisition from Russia, but we've made it very clear to them that this is a legacy relationship. And in any case, we need all the accessories and spare parts, etc. So this relationship has to continue, and many of the systems that we have, they work only with Russian equipment. So it is not that we can make a total jump, although our diversification has taken place. As I said, with the United States, anything about 20 to 22 billion dollars we are importing from the United States. It is the second largest exporter of defense equipment to India. We are also importing defense, having defense supplies from France, Rafale, everyone knows about that. Also from Israel, we have our army chief there very recently. So there is diversification, but still the Russian Federation continues to be the most important defense supplier to India. Of course, much greater indigenization is being worked on. Second, let me come to the area of nuclear energy, and nuclear power is also very important. Of course, we did receive cryogenic engines from Russia in the 1990s. We also had a heavy water plant that was established in Kota that is functioning well. But the most important thing is more recently, in the last decade, when we have started the Kudankulam nuclear power plant project that has started, and we already have the latest technology. Again, Russia is the only country which has supplied that technology and which has established these nuclear power plants in India after India got the waiver from IAEA in 2008. The unique waiver to engage in global partnership in nuclear materials and nuclear technology. So we had the first nuclear power plant in Kudankulam in 2014. It is 1,200 megawatt, what is known as the VVER technology. It is the latest technology. So the first two plants are already functioning. They are functioning very well. 2014 and 2017. The third and fourth reactors are in the process of construction. I think one of them should be ready in 2022 and the other in 2023. And the fifth power plant, what is called the pouring of the concrete, was done just a couple of months ago. So there's going to be 6 power plants in Kudankulam. There is also another. There's also another 6 power plants to be established in Andhra Pradesh. So talks on that are also going on. Work on that is also going on, and that should also be, I think, in the coming summit, either the one on the 6th or the next ones. We should be able to get that. Now, it is again not the first 2 power plants. They were supplied completely, they were from the Russian Federation, but there has been progressive indigenization as we have gone forward. So in 3 and 4, there have been more parts, components, turbine components that are coming here. And it is expected that there will be increasing contribution of Indian industry as far as future nuclear power plants are concerned. India is also collaborating with the Russian Federation in third countries. For instance, Russia is constructing a similar nuclear power plant in Bangladesh in Rupur, and there also certain parts and components are being manufactured and supplied there. Russia is also getting orders for supply of these power plants to Africa, Ethiopia, and some other countries. And there also, India and Russia will cooperate and collaborate. So, this is also an important segment of our cooperation. What is particularly worthwhile to note here is that Russia is the only country which has supplied nuclear power technology to India. We have signed agreements with the White Westinghouse of the United States. We have signed with Areva of France, but so far there has been no progress on the ground, nothing that has come on the ground or started production. It's only the with the Russian Federation. The third aspect, and since I'm running out of time, let me do it quickly, is space. Again, space is very important, whether it is Aryabhat or Bhaskar. Soviet Union helped India in sending those satellites into space. After that, I'm sure all of us remember the first Indian man in space, that was Rakesh Sharma in 1984. And now also Russia is helping and supporting uh, uh, India in its first man mission, Gaganyaan, and discussions have been going on, and training is already taking place. So space is become a very important area of cooperation between the two. Then there is hydrocarbons. Hydrocarbons is also an important area. There is uh, again around the 2016, which was the 17th summit between the two countries. Russia agreed to invest about $12 billion, the largest investment from Russia to India in acquiring the assets of SR oil company. India has also invested about $8 billion into the hydrocarbon sector. We started in 2000 with the Sakhalin 1. It was a $2.5 billion investment, which was the highest investment in this area by ONGC Videsh Limited. After that, we have gone into other areas, Vankor Neft, Rosneft, etc., other oil fields, and also the Imperial coal field, again for $2 billion, that was acquired sometime in the first decade of the 2000s. So in the area of hydrocarbons also, there is a lot of cooperation. This cooperation is increasing, and there are also talks about setting up a gas pipeline from Russia to India. We'll have to see how it works out, but this is still in the stage of development. Now, very quickly, let me come to some of the more recent summits and the decisions taken. So the first was the 20th summit in 2019. It took place in Vladivostok. Prime Minister Modi was the chief guest at the Eastern Economic Forum. There were a number of agreements that were signed, about 19 documents signed. They covered cooperation in defense, in space, information technology, foreign policy, trade and investment, hydrocarbons, shipbuilding, railways, and they also adopted a joint statement which was titled Partnership for Global Peace and Stability, because that was something that was very critical and crucial. Now, some of the main items there. One is in terms of trade and investment. I have not spoken about that at all. Let me just mention a few sentences. Although India and Russia have a strategic advanced partnership between the two countries, a special and privileged strategic partnership between the two countries. But our economic interaction and economic cooperation is far below potential. It's just about 8 to 10 billion dollars. Maximum it has gone in recent years is about 12 billion dollars, which is a pity, which is a shame, meaning it doesn't do credit to our very strong bilateral ties in other areas. We have agreed that we will increase this to about $25 billion, sorry, $30 billion by 2025. But now with COVID going on, the possibility of this does not appear to be all that great. Then the discussions at the 20th summit in 2019 in Vladivostok was that India should sign a free trade agreement with the Eurasian Economic Union. Discussions have been going on for quite some time, and I am very hopeful that very soon, sooner rather than later, that we'll be able to enter into this. When Prime Minister Modi was in Vladivostok, he committed 1 billion US dollars to explore possibilities of collaboration between Russia's Far East and India, because it's a huge area, but population is very less. It is very rich in terms of minerals and commodities. What Russia is particularly apprehensive about is that since it has a border in that area with China, that China is slowly inching its way forward in Far East. It wants India to come in there, even as far as Indian people are concerned, because Indian diaspora around the world has been extremely successful. So that also discussions did take place. And also what Prime Minister Modi did, he also offered $1 billion to explore possibilities in Indian companies coming there. There were four chief ministers of Indian states. I think it was Maharashtra, it was UP, it was Haryana, and maybe Andhra Pradesh. These four chief ministers went there to explore possibilities. We also had the Indian Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal. He also went to Vladivostok to look at what could be done to take the relationship forward and to improve India's investments there. What the President Putin also offered to India was its collaboration in the Arctic. Now, that I think is extremely important, because again, Russia is very apprehensive about China getting in there, so it would want India to come in a big way. The importance of civil nuclear energy in bilateral relations was underlined, and both sides said that we need to cooperate in third countries. They also noted the immense potential of cooperation in non-nuclear, non-fossil fuel energy, that is, in renewable energy. They also agreed to develop the international north-south transport corridor, which again, in your lectures you must have come across. It goes from Russia via Iran to India, and now we are trying to look at it to take it from through Central Asia also. So there has been quite a bit of forward movement. India has started working on the Chabahar project also. We want to integrate Chabahar with the INSTC, so that was also discussed. And it was also discussed to open a connectivity route between Chennai and Vladivostok. So these were some of the very significant decisions. In the area of diamond industry also, it was decided that both sides should start working together much greater, because India is the biggest center of cutting and polishing of diamonds, small diamonds, because we have our very talented, trained workforce which does this. So that is an area where we work together. In the field of joint exercises, also uh, we have been working together and expanding. Even the first tri-services exercise was also held between the two countries. Now, I could tell you more about what happened as far as the 19th and the 18th summits were concerned, but maybe I will skip that, and if there's interest during question answer session, we could do that. Some additional points before I come to some of the friction areas, which some of them Professor Girish Kumar also mentioned. Couple of additional points as far as our relations are concerned. The first informal summit was held in April 2018 between the two sides. And this was in Sochi, both sides. No, I think April 2018 was with China in Wuhan, and with Russia, it was in May 2018. And they exchanged views on global and bilateral ties. At that time, it was thought that maybe our relations needed some greater attention from our political leadership to take it forward. So they exchanged several MOUs in fields of space, nuclear energy. That was the time also when this S-400 Triumph agreement was signed. The There was also some discussion on building a gas pipeline that I spoke about. Russia also awarded its highest state decoration, which is called the Order of Saint Andrew the Apostle. It was given to Prime Minister Modi in 2019, and it was presented to the Prime Minister for his distinguished contribution to development of privileged strategic partnership between Russia and India and friendly ties between the Russian and Indian people. So this was done in 2019. Now there have been some comments about the fact that India and Russia have been not on the same page as far as Afghanistan is concerned, because whether it was the Moscow format or it was the extended Troika format, India was not invited in those discussions. I think that might have been the case because what was mentioned very clearly by Russia at one point was, what does India bring to the table? Because all the other countries were having discussions, were in dialogue with the Taliban. India is the only country which was not talking to the Taliban, and we were strongly supportive of the Ashraf Ghani government. But since the Taliban took charge of position, took control in Kabul on the 15th of August, I think Russia has also realized that Taliban is not in a position to execute, to implement all the promises that it had made. And that is why we saw the telephone call at the initiative of President Putin to Prime Minister Modi on the 24th of August. And at that, they decided to establish a personal bilateral channel to discuss issues on Afghanistan and to keep a very close watch, a very close eye on this. And it was a result of that that we had the visit of the Russian NSA, National Security Advisor, General Nikolai Patrushev, to India on the 8th of September, so that there could be convergence as far as positions of both our countries are concerned. And notwithstanding the fact that he was in India on the 8th of September, Patrushev also came to India again on the 10th of November. So within a period of about 2 months, he was back here to discuss again about Afghanistan. So I think this speaks about the confidence that both sides have in each other and the importance that both sides have in each other of their positions on Afghanistan. And there was total convergence of views. India was also invited to the Moscow format of Afghanistan talks on the 20th of October, in which India had not only participated in the discussions, but they also had a one-to-one meeting with the Taliban delegation there. This was the second direct contact, overt contact, open contact between India and Afghanistan on India and Taliban on this issue. Now, very quickly, let me come to, because I think I've already taken more than 45 minutes, let me very quickly come to some friction points, some wrinkles in the relationship. And I will not spend more than 2 minutes over it, and then we can go into questions on or comments that any one of you might have. The first, in terms of the wrinkles, is Russia's relations with China. They have been strengthening for some time, but I think uh, the turning point for very fast development of relations came in 2014 with the Ukraine crisis, and also the annexation of Crimea by Russia, the sanctions that were imposed on Russia by the West, by America, by Europe, and it had no avenue to export its gas, its energy. So that really pushed Russia into the arms of China. They signed a $400 billion deal for supply of gas and oil to China. So that, and since relations between India and China are have deteriorated very significantly, so whether that could have an impact on India's relations with China. Then Russia's very strident opposition to the Indo-Pacific and the Quad. Russia has been using the language that China has been using in the past, that is of calling it a Russian, or calling it an Asian NATO, and that it is a security grouping to act against China. Then Russia's growing ties with Pakistan. We saw that there is some supply of military equipment. The exercises, bilateral military exercises, started in September 2016, just after Uri attack on India. And this has been every year, these exercises have been going. Russia is also investing in Pakistan in building a gas pipeline to Karachi. Then we also had Russia's position on, as I mentioned, on Afghanistan, but that seems to be getting better uh, as we proceed. And I'm sure there's going to be very good discussion between Prime Minister Modi and President Putin. The also the fact that there was no summit held in 2020, that was adversely commented upon, as I said, because many critics and commentators said that if Prime Minister Modi could have so many virtual summits with so many countries, whether it is countries in Europe, with EU, with Netherlands, with Denmark, with Uzbekistan, so many countries, then why could a virtual summit at least not have been organized with Russia also? But I think what is important to note in this connection is that the scope expands nature and depth of relations between India and Russia that I have tried to give you a flavor of. They are so complex that it would not be possible to do justice to them in a virtual setting. So maybe it was good that this was not happening. And now the fact that Mr. Putin is coming here, and I think what also needs to be noted is that this is his first visit outside his country for maybe about 1.5, 2 years. The only other visit that he made was to Geneva in June of this year for bilateral tete-a-tete with Joe Biden. But after that, he has not gone anywhere. And the fact that he has decided to make a standalone visit uh, to India rather than to China, I think that is sending a message both to China, to India, as well as to the world. So it speaks about the strength of this partnership. Also, I could mention that, when India was having its presidency of the United Nations Security Council in August this year, then India organized a discussion on maritime security on the 9th of August, which was chaired by Prime Minister Modi. And President Putin personally came for that meeting. He stayed for that meeting. He made an intervention, and I think this was his way of showing his respect, his regard for the Prime Minister, because the last time that he had attended such a meeting was in 2005. So there are a few wrinkles that I've mentioned, but I think there is an underlying strength and dynamism and resilience as far as this relationship is concerned. It is, I think we need to recognize that times are different. Circumstances are not the same as they were in 1971 when the whole world was going through a Cold War. This relationship is important to both countries, and both of them will try and are trying to expand the areas of convergence and minimize the areas of divergence. So, this is what we can see in the fact that Prime Minister Modi will be hosting President Putin. Also, that the first 2+2 dialogue between the two sides will be taking place just before the summit. So far, India has only three 2+2 relations dialogues with three countries, that is the three Quad partners, which are Australia, Japan, and the United States. And now Russia also gets added to that list. So Russia is also at the same level as the Quad partners, if not higher, because I feel that the content of our relationship is much stronger than many of the other countries. So let me finish here.